Welcome to Crisis in Perception, where we examine the systems shaping our world, one book at a time. Today we're jumping into a systems-level analysis of Noam Chomsky's 1973 collection of essays, For Reasons of State.
All right, so Chomsky kicks things off with this really fiery quote from the anarchist thinker Bakunin. But our goal here isn't to debate whether the state is good or bad. Instead, we're going to focus on the systems-level framework that Chomsky unpacks. He uses the Vietnam War, the Pentagon Papers, and government secrecy as a kind of case study to show us how a system of power actually works, from the inside. This is a structural analysis, not a partisan one.
So what's the core system this book reveals? It's this idea right here, reasons of state. Now, this isn't just a simple excuse. It's a whole logic, a framework that makes actions that would otherwise seem totally indefensible sound rational. You could almost think of it as the underlying operating system for state power. In this explainer, we're going to map out exactly how that system is wired, according to Chomsky's analysis.
At the heart of the book, there's this central puzzle, the huge, glaring gap between a nation's stated ideals, things like peace, freedom, democracy, and the often brutal reality of its actual foreign policy. This contradiction creates what we call a crisis in perception, where the official story just doesn't add up when you look at the facts on the ground. To really get our heads around how this system works, we're going to use a single visual metaphor for this whole explainer, a control room. Just imagine the state's decision-making apparatus as a complex control room, one that's designed to regulate very specific inputs to generate very specific outputs, all to achieve its goals.
And this slide, right here, this is the absolute key to the whole book. See, when we judge state actions by the public ideals on the left, a lot of policies look like huge mistakes or just completely irrational. But Chomsky argues, if you judge those exact same policies by the actual system goals on the right, maintaining credibility, dominance, and control, suddenly they snap into focus. They start to make a kind of perfect, cold, rational sense.
So, if the control room has its goals, what are the levers it's pulling? What are the dials it's turning? Let's start by looking at the inputs the system uses to manage itself and shape the outcomes.
A primary input is executive secrecy. But here's the twist. It's not just about hiding information. As Chomsky points out, it's also about strategically releasing a flood of overwhelming data, claims, and counterclaims. The goal isn't always to convince you of a specific lie. Sometimes it's just to confuse you so thoroughly that you just get tired and check out. A weary and bewildered public, after all, is a neutralized public.
And feeding right into that, you've got another crucial input, bringing expert authority into the fold. Chomsky talks about the technical intelligentsia, academics, scientists, policy experts, who can provide this layer of objective, rational justification for state policy. They often frame really complex moral and political issues in these sterile, managerial terms, which has the effect of shrinking the whole scope of legitimate debate and kind of hiding the human costs.
And wow, this brings us to a third incredibly powerful input, language itself. This system works to literally redefine reality. So, a local nationalist movement fighting for self-determination, that gets reframed as foreign aggression. People at home protesting a war, that's labeled as disorder. What Chomsky found in the Pentagon Papers was that this wasn't just spin for the public. This was the language they used themselves inside the government. Okay, so those are the inputs the control room is processing. Now, what are the desired outputs? What is this entire system engineered to produce?
Well, the immediate output is a state of what you might call manufactured consent. Or, maybe more often, it's manufactured apathy. All those inputs, the secrecy, the expert authority, the language, they all work together in a process. The state's version of events is pushed out, repeated over and over, until, as Chomsky says, falsehood becomes truth. The public, feeling overwhelmed and confused, mostly disengages, which lets policy move forward without a real challenge.
And here's the bottom line, the most important part. The primary output of this entire system is simply policy continuity. The whole machine is designed to ensure that the core policies serving that global economic and strategic order just keep going, uninterrupted. And this happens no matter which political party is in charge, and, often, in direct opposition to what the public actually wants. This brings us right back to our channel's central theme, that crisis in perception we talked about. It happens when we judge the actions of this system by its stated ideals. Chomsky's analysis is basically urging us to recalibrate our view, to switch lenses and start judging the system by its actual functions and incentives instead. And when you put on these new glasses,
things start to look really different. Take, for example, a long, brutal, expensive war that ends in a military stalemate. From a public perspective, that's a catastrophic failure, right? But from the system's perspective, if that same war successfully one time for neighboring countries to be absorbed into the preferred global economic system, well, back in the control room, that might just get logged as a success.
But, Chomsky doesn't just leave us in this cold mechanical control room. He offers a philosophical counterpoint. Drawing on his other work in linguistics, he argues that the creative, free, and unbounded nature of human language actually points to something deep within us, an essential human need for freedom. This vision of who we are as humans stands in total opposition to systems that just want to manage and control us.
And so that leaves us with a final big question. The analysis in For Reasons of State really is a powerful tool. It's asking us to look past the official stories and comforting narratives. So the question for us is, what else becomes visible in our world when we start to analyze systems, not by what they say they do, but by what they actually do?
This project is free and publicly accessible. If you'd like to support the time, tools, and research behind Crisis in Perception, you can become a supporter on Patreon. For a longer, audio-based analysis of this topic, see the deep dive linked in the description.
If you enjoy this kind of systems-level analysis, please like, subscribe, and comment with books or topics you'd like us to explore next.